I exposed my husband's secret second family, and now he's falling apart. Yet somehow, my in-laws are blaming me. I've been married to Roddy for 7 years, and we share a wonderful son who means everything to us. Our relationship has been filled with shared experiences, but the way we met is something that will always stand out in my mind. We first crossed paths when I was working at my previous company, and he was my boss. Right away, something about Roddy caught my attention. He had a natural charm and a warmth that made him approachable and easy to talk to. He was incredibly helpful, not just with me but with everyone around him, which drew me in even more. As time went on and I got to know him better, I found myself feeling more and more connected to him in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just his kindness that made me fall for him, although that was a huge part of it. He made me feel seen and valued in a way I hadn't experienced before. Even simple, everyday moments felt special when I was with him. As we started spending more time together outside of work, I realized how much I truly cared for him. And when he finally asked me out, I didn't hesitate to say yes. When we began dating, I entered the relationship without any grand expectations. I wasn't necessarily looking for something long-term or deeply committed at the time. I just enjoyed being with him and appreciated how happy he made me. It felt like we had a unique bond, built on respect and shared values. It all seemed so natural, like it was meant to be, and I often found myself thinking that we were truly meant to be together. Roddy and I come from very different family backgrounds, and those differences have influenced our relationship in distinct ways. I was fortunate to grow up with supportive parents who made sure all my needs were met, whereas Roddy had a much tougher upbringing. His father wasn't really in the picture, and his mother relied heavily on him, particularly financially. She didn't have a job or savings, so Roddy, being her only child, had to shoulder the responsibility of supporting her from a young age. His mother constantly pressured him for money, and if he didn't provide, she would guilt-trip him or become angry. Roddy was open about his situation with his mother from the start, but I didn't fully grasp the extent of how much he was helping her financially until we started living together. When we decided to move in together, I offered him to stay at my place since it was bigger and more comfortable. At first, we agreed to split the bills evenly, but soon I noticed that Roddy often struggled with money. He would mention how his bank account was nearly drained, and at times he couldn't afford basic things like groceries or gas. When I asked him about it, he explained that most of his money was going to support his mother. While I sympathized with his sense of duty towards her, it was hard not to feel frustrated. It was tough watching him struggle financially, especially when I knew he could manage his money better if he wasn't always sending so much to her. Realizing this wasn't a sustainable situation, I suggested we change how we handled our finances. I proposed that I cover 70% of the rent and bills, while he would handle 30%. This way, even after helping his mother, he would still have enough for himself. I hoped this would ease the financial strain and allow him to enjoy life more without constantly stressing over money. Thankfully, the new financial arrangement worked well for both of us. It restored a sense of balance in our relationship and alleviated the tension that had been building around money. Roddy could continue supporting his mother without feeling completely overwhelmed, and our home life became much more peaceful as a result. This solution has been in place ever since and has truly made things more manageable for both of us. When I first discovered I was pregnant with our son, Matt, I was filled with a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, I was overjoyed at the thought of becoming a mother, but on the other, I was anxious about how Roddy would react. Given his background and the financial strain he was already under, I feared that this news might add to his burden. I imagined him feeling stressed or hesitant, worried about the added responsibility of raising a child. To my surprise, Roddy's reaction couldn't have been more positive. When I shared the news of my pregnancy, his face lit up with pure joy. He was ecstatic, far more excited than I had anticipated. In fact, not long after, he proposed to me, wanting us to be married before our son arrived. His eagerness to embrace our future as a family gave me a deep sense of security and happiness, and we tied the knot shortly after. From the moment Matt was born, Roddy stepped into the role of fatherhood with incredible devotion and love. Watching him care for our son has been heartwarming. He's always made an effort to be present in Matt's life, from reading bedtime stories to playing basketball with him on weekends. He helps with homework and never misses any of Matt's school matches. Seeing how engaged Roddy is as a father has deepened my love for him even more. The bond he shares with our son makes me appreciate him in ways I never could have imagined when we first started dating. Until recently, I believed that Roddy and I were destined to grow old together, sharing a lifetime of experiences and memories. We would often dream about the future, making plans to retire and travel the world, hand in hand, exploring new cultures and places. So, you can imagine my complete shock and devastation when I discovered that Roddy had been leading a double life behind my back. To give you some context, both Roddy and I have jobs that offer us the flexibility to work from home on most days. Roddy has his own designated workspace in our spare room, which he calls his workroom. It's a neatly organized space with all the essentials for his job: a large desk, multiple monitors, and shelves packed with files and documents. Since he handles sensitive information, he takes his work seriously. He even installed a lock on his workroom door to ensure that everything inside remains secure. I never questioned it or felt the need to invade his workspace. I trusted him completely and understood the need for privacy, especially with a curious child in the house. I'll never forget the day I found that phone. Roddy had gone out for a quick errand and Matt was taking a nap. I was tidying up around the house when I noticed Roddy's workroom door was slightly open, which was unusual since he always kept it locked when he wasn't inside. I decided to take the opportunity to clean up his room a bit, thinking he might have some empty cans or wrappers lying around. As I was organizing his desk, I spotted a drawer slightly ajar. As I reached to close it, something shiny caught my eye. Inside was a phone I had never seen before. Curious, I picked up the phone and noticed it was switched off. My mind started racing with questions. Why did Roddy have a second phone? Was it for work? But if so, why hide it? A knot began to form in my stomach as I debated whether I should unlock it. Part of me wanted to respect his privacy, but the other part was desperate for answers. This was so unlike Roddy, and I needed to know what was going on. I made the decision to turn the phone on. As soon as the screen lit up, it started vibrating non-stop with incoming messages. My heart pounded as I watched, hands shaking with fear and disbelief. The notifications were overwhelming, with multiple messages from an unknown number. What hit me hardest was the way the person was addressing Roddy, calling him boyfriend. My heart sank, and I was consumed with confusion and horror. As I continued reading the messages on the phone, the horrifying truth began to unfold. It was clear that a woman on the other end had a deep, personal connection with Roddy, one that I had been completely oblivious to. The texts were casual but intimate. She spoke of meeting up with him soon, and she mentioned that her daughter was excited to see her papa. The word papa hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart raced and my knees felt weak as I began to grasp the situation. This woman was referring to my husband as the father of her child. My thoughts were racing. How could Roddy have kept something like this from me? We had built a life together, and I had never even heard of this woman. As I scrolled through more of the messages, my dread intensified, and tears began to well up in my eyes. My hands shook as I tried to comprehend the enormity of what I had discovered. Desperate for more answers, I attempted to unlock the phone to dig deeper into the messages, but I didn't know the passcode. The sense of helplessness in that moment was overwhelming, and I felt a wave of anger and betrayal surge through me. My instincts screamed to confront him, to throw the phone across the room, but I knew that I had to be smart about this. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I realized I needed evidence. Hurriedly, I grabbed my own phone and snapped photos of the messages on the screen. I needed to preserve this information to figure out who this woman was, and how long this had been going on. More importantly, I needed to understand why Roddy had hidden this other life from me. Once I had captured as many of the texts as possible, I carefully placed the phone back in the drawer, making sure everything looked untouched. My heart was still racing, but I knew I had to keep my emotions in check. If Roddy suspected I had found the phone, I might lose the chance to uncover more about his deception. As I stepped out of the workroom, a flood of emotions overwhelmed me. Rage, heartbreak, confusion. But amidst all the chaos inside me, I felt a determination rise. I was going to get to the bottom of this. I needed to know the truth about this woman and the life Roddy had been living in secret. I had to approach this carefully, gathering all the pieces of the puzzle before confronting him. Until then, I had to maintain my composure and act as though everything was normal. even though my world had just been shattered. That night, lying next to Roddy in bed, the weight of what I had uncovered pressed down on me like never before. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out, but I couldn't, not with him right beside me. The man I had trusted and loved now felt like a stranger, someone who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The love I had for him felt like it was fading, replaced by a growing coldness and a sense of profound loss. I couldn't believe that the man I had planned to spend the rest of my life with had been living a lie. I needed more answers. I couldn't wait. I decided that once Roddy was asleep, I would sneak into the bathroom and call the number from his secret phone. I figured if I called late enough, the woman on the other end would be asleep, and I could reach her voicemail. Maybe I'd at least get a name, a clue about who she was and what was really happening. I was willing to take the risk, driven by my desperate need to uncover the truth. As the night wore on and the house fell into silence, I finally made my move. Quietly, I slipped out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest, and made my way to the bathroom. My hands trembled as I dialed the number from the photos I'd taken earlier. My entire body tensed as the phone rang, each second dragging out painfully. I silently prayed that the woman wouldn't pick up, not knowing what I'd say if she did. All I wanted was to hear her voicemail greeting, to get some kind of information. After what felt like an eternity, the ringing stopped, and I was greeted by a soft, cheerful voice on the other end. A voicemail message. The woman introduced herself as Lisa. Hearing her lighthearted tone broke me all over again. Not only had Roddy been unfaithful, but he was doing so with someone who seemed so much younger, and possibly someone who had a child who called him Papa. It felt like the betrayal cut even deeper, knowing that Roddy had built a whole other life with her. I was left reeling, heartbroken, and desperate for answers. My heart shattered even further as the weight of the truth sank in. Roddy wasn't just cheating on me. He was involved with a much younger woman, Lisa, who saw him as a father figure to her daughter. Standing alone in the bathroom, clutching my phone, I was overwhelmed by devastation. The man I had devoted my life to, the father of our son, had built an entirely separate life with another family behind my back. The next morning, despite the crushing heartache, I knew I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't let myself be consumed by sadness. I needed answers. My first instinct was to find out who Lisa was. I began searching through Roddy's Facebook, scouring his friends list for any hint of her. I racked my brain trying to recall if he had ever mentioned someone named Lisa, but no matter how hard I tried, the name didn't ring any bells. Frustrated and disheartened, I realized that searching online might not be enough. It was then that I decided I needed to confront her directly. My emotions were swirling: anger, betrayal, anxiety, but I knew that confronting Lisa was the only way to get the full story. With determination, I picked up my phone and dialed the number I had seen on Roddy's secret phone. When she answered, I introduced myself as Roddy's wife, keeping my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within me. I asked her outright if she had been in a relationship with my husband, knowing full well that she might not even be aware of my existence. Lisa's initial reaction was one of shock and confusion. She asked me to confirm what I had said, clearly taken aback by my introduction. I calmly explained that I had been married to Roddy for 7 years and that we had a son together. The silence that followed was deafening. I told her how I had found her messages on his hidden phone and suggested that we meet to clear everything up. I even offered to show her proof of our marriage certificate, family photos, anything to confirm that Roddy and I were indeed together. After a long, tense pause, Lisa finally spoke, and what she said made my heart sink even further. She asked if I knew that she had a daughter with Roddy. My mind reeled as I struggled to process her words. Could it really be true? Was my husband not only leading a double life, but also the father of another child? My voice trembled as I asked her to clarify if Roddy was truly the father of her daughter. Through tears, Lisa began sharing her side of the story. She explained how she and Roddy had been together for over a year, and when she discovered she was pregnant, it was Roddy who convinced her to keep the baby. He had promised her a future together, saying they would start a life as a family. She had trusted him completely, never suspecting anything was wrong, even when he disappeared for days at a time, claiming his job required him to travel. As she continued, Lisa mentioned something that stung even more. Roddy didn't have any photos of himself or us on social media, which was something I had always found strange too. But to her, it had seemed like a quirk, not a red flag. Lisa's voice shook as she assured me that she would never have been with Roddy if she had known he was married. She was horrified and disgusted by the truth, just as I was, feeling betrayed not only on her own behalf but on mine as well. Listening to her, I felt an overwhelming sadness. Both of us had trusted Roddy, had built our lives around him, and now we were facing the reality of his betrayal together. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably as the weight of everything hit me all at once. On the other end of the line, Lisa cried too. In that heartbreaking moment, we were two strangers bound by the same pain, betrayed by the same man. Lisa and I agreed to meet in person. There were so many unanswered questions, and I needed to understand how Roddy had managed to deceive both of us for so long. Before confronting him, I needed all the pieces of the puzzle. I couldn't just confront him without being fully prepared for what lay ahead. In the days that followed, I devised a plan. I told Roddy that I had a last-minute work trip and that he would need to stay home with our son, Matt. Roddy was initially upset, mentioning that he had a work trip planned as well, but I calmly insisted that he cancel it. I told him it was important and that I wouldn't ask him to stay unless it was necessary. He eventually agreed, allowing me to move forward with my plan. I flew to Lisa's city to meet her. We spent hours piecing together the fractured reality of our lives. Sitting across from her, looking into the eyes of the woman who had unknowingly shared a life with my husband, was surreal. She showed me pictures of her daughter, a child who bore an uncanny resemblance to Roddy. I, in turn, showed her photos of my family, the life I had built with Roddy over the years. As we talked, the pain became unbearable, but we both agreed that we couldn't stay with a man who had deceived us so thoroughly. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. We both deserved better, and we knew it. Lisa shared her own evidence, photos, videos, and messages she had exchanged with Roddy. I needed this proof to confront him. During our conversation, another detail came to light that made my blood boil. Roddy had been paying child support for Lisa's daughter. While I understood that supporting his child was the right thing to do, I was furious at the realization that Roddy had been using my money to fund his double life. I had always taken on the larger share of our household expenses, believing his finances were tight because he was helping his mother. Now I realized that he had been diverting money to maintain this other life. The more we talked, the clearer it became that Roddy had been using me for years, exploiting my love, my trust, and my financial support to lead his double life. I was filled with anger, but it also gave me strength. I was no longer the trusting wife he had manipulated. I was ready to take back control. After returning from my trip, I knew I couldn't stay in the house any longer. The betrayal was too raw, too painful. I packed a bag for myself and one for Matt, and moved in with my parents. I needed time to regroup and figure out my next steps. When I arrived at my parents' house, I told them everything, and they were incredibly supportive, agreeing that I needed to end my marriage. Roddy soon began calling, trying to figure out where we were. I answered him calmly, telling him that I knew about his double life. He was immediately defensive, demanding to know what I was talking about. I told him that I had spoken to Lisa and that I was leaving him. Roddy's reaction was one of outrage and disbelief. He began yelling, insisting that I give him a chance to explain. Taking a deep breath, I asked him point blank if it was false that he had a daughter with Lisa. I asked if it was false that he had been paying child support for her. His silence spoke volumes, confirming everything I already knew. But I didn't stop there. I sent an email to both sides of the family, outlining the entire situation. I included the pictures, videos, and screenshots that Lisa had shared with me. I wanted everyone to know the truth. Roddy's deception, his betrayal, and the double life he had been leading. I knew it would cause a stir, but I was beyond caring. It wasn't just about exposing him, it was about reclaiming my dignity. The reactions were swift and varied. Some were supportive, others were in disbelief. Roddy's family was split. Some condemned him while others urged me to work things out. But I was done. Roddy has been calling non-stop, furious that I aired his dirty laundry for everyone to see, but I don't care anymore. He made his choices, and now he has to face the consequences. Update 1. Earlier today, my mother-in-law reached out, and the conversation took a turn I never expected. At first, she seemed just as shocked as I was when I discovered Roddy's affair. I thought for a brief moment that she might offer me some understanding, or at the very least, some comfort. But that hope quickly faded as her tone shifted, and she began placing the blame squarely on me. To my disbelief, she was actually blaming me for exposing Roddy. She questioned why I would let something like this destroy our marriage, implying that I should have swept his betrayal under the rug and moved on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She brought up the vows I had made when I married Roddy, saying that it was now my duty to uphold those vows no matter what he had done. Her words felt like a slap in the face, as though she was accusing me of giving up too easily. Then she dropped the bombshell that pushed me over the edge. She said that since Roddy couldn't undo his mistakes, I should simply forgive him and move on. She made it sound so easy, like the solution was to pretend nothing had happened and resume our lives as if everything was normal. I could feel my blood boiling as she spoke, but I stayed silent, listening to her misguided argument. The final straw came when she tried to argue that despite Roddy's double life, he had still provided for me and our son. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at her comment. Provided for us? I laid it all out for her. Roddy's financial contribution to our household was a mere 30%. The rest, the majority of the bills, groceries, and everyday expenses, had been my responsibility. I was the one working long hours, stretching our budget, and keeping us afloat. I made it crystal clear that I was the one who had been holding everything together while he barely contributed. I didn't hold back. I told her flat out that I don't forgive cheaters, and there was no way I would ever compromise on that. If she wanted to keep defending Roddy, she could take him back because I was done. As I stood my ground, her voice grew louder and more frantic, but I'd had enough. Without hesitation, I hung up the phone in the middle of her tirade. After the call, I felt a strange sense of relief, like a burden had been lifted. It was clear that she would never see her son for what he truly was, but her opinion no longer mattered to me. I was finally free from their toxic hold. Update 2. A few weeks have passed since my explosive conversation with my mother-in-law, and life has been nothing short of chaotic. Most of my time has been consumed by meetings with my lawyer as we move forward with the divorce. It's a grueling process, but I'm committed to seeing it through. There's no turning back now. Roddy, unsurprisingly, has been bombarding me with calls and texts, desperate to talk. At first, it was incessant. Multiple calls every day, followed by long-winded texts asking for another chance to explain himself. But I've made a conscious decision not to respond. Each time his name pops up on my phone, it's a fresh reminder of his betrayal. The sight of his name sends a rush of anger and hurt through me, but it also reinforces my resolve. I trusted him with everything, and he shattered that trust beyond repair. I don't need to hear his side of the story. I already know enough. He was unfaithful, and there's no justification for what he did. I've spent far too long trying to make our marriage work, constantly questioning if I was doing something wrong. But I'm done blaming myself. He made his choices, and now I'm making mine. I just want him out of my life so I can begin the process of healing and rebuilding. The legal process, while exhausting, has also given me a sense of clarity. With each step, I'm reclaiming pieces of myself that I lost during our marriage. I've always been the one shouldering more of the financial responsibility, but now it's about reclaiming my emotional independence as well. It's about breaking free from the manipulation, the lies, and the feelings of inadequacy that Roddy had instilled in me for years. As for our son, I've come to terms with the fact that he will still have a relationship with his father. That's not something I want to take away from him. Roddy may be a terrible husband, but I want our son to have a healthy relationship with him. However, I've made it clear that Matt will live with me full-time. I'll ensure that he's raised in a stable, loving environment, free from the chaos Roddy has caused. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update, and while progress has been slow, the divorce is still underway. The legal system moves at a snail's pace, and although it's frustrating, I'm trying to remain patient. I'm ready for this chapter of my life to end, but it feels like it's dragging on forever. I'm determined to secure the alimony I deserve. I've worked too hard over the years to let Roddy walk away without paying for the damage he's caused. For years, I carried the financial burden in our marriage while he took advantage of my trust. Now, it's time for him to pay up. I won't let him walk away without facing the consequences of his actions. During this time, my relationship with Lisa has grown stronger. She's been an incredible source of support, and we've stayed in close contact. She ended things with Roddy the moment she found out about his lies, and she's only accepted child support from him. Like me, she wants nothing more to do with him. It's strange how this whole ordeal has brought us together, but I'm grateful to have her in my life. Lisa has even shared updates about Roddy, and unsurprisingly, he's been an absentee father to their daughter. He hasn't visited her in months, which breaks my heart. For all his talk about being a provider, he can't even provide the most basic love and attention to his own child. It's one thing to cheat on your spouse, but to neglect your child, that's a whole different level of cruelty. I've told Lisa, and I truly mean it. If she ever wants to get back with Roddy, or if some other woman chooses to be with him, I won't stand in their way. I'm done with him. He's no longer my problem, and I don't care what happens to him anymore. He's a manipulative liar, and if someone else wants to deal with his mess, they're welcome to it. I just hope for their sake that he becomes a better man, but I'm certainly not holding my breath. Commentary time. Wow, what an intense and heartbreaking story. I can only imagine the overwhelming emotions OP must have gone through after discovering her husband's secret double life, the betrayal, anger, and devastation she must have felt when her entire world was turned upside down is truly unimaginable. What makes this story even more powerful is the strength OP shows throughout the ordeal. Rather than being consumed by the pain, she took control of the situation, confronted the truth, and made the difficult decision to leave the marriage. The fact that her mother-in-law had the audacity to blame OP for exposing the truth is beyond frustrating. It's unfortunate how some people refuse to hold others accountable for their actions and instead expect the betrayed to simply forgive and forget. OP's decision to stand firm and not tolerate the lies and deceit is inspiring. She's proving that her self-respect and her son's well-being come first, and that's exactly how it should be. It's also worth noting how OP managed to navigate this incredibly tough time while also keeping her son's relationship with his father in mind. Even though Roddy has proven to be a terrible husband, OP still wants her son to have a healthy relationship with him. That level of maturity and emotional strength speaks volumes about the kind of person OP is. And then there's Lisa, the other woman who was also deceived by Roddy. The bond that formed between the two of them through such a painful experience shows that sometimes, out of betrayal, support, and understanding can emerge. It's not easy to reach out and form a connection with someone who's been in a similar situation, especially when emotions are so raw, but it's clear they both found strength in each other. In the end, OP's story is a powerful reminder that we don't have to stay in toxic relationships. There's strength in taking back control of your life, and OP's journey of rebuilding and finding her own path again is an incredible example of that. And before we wrap up, if you found this story moving or thought-provoking, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.